At this point, we'll go on to the agenda. The President pauses.
Onorevole LEINEN, prego.
Mr. LEINEN, you have the floor.
Mr. President, I would like to ask you to take contact with Commission and Council in order to push for the refusal of the accreditation of the designated US Ambassador, Ted Malloch. Mr. Malloch has shown extreme hostility towards the European Union and the core idea of European integration. I think he should be persona non grata in Brussels. Thank you.
Onorevole CORAZZA-BILDT.
Ms. CORAZZA-BILDT.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to share the concern of many of us for the resumption of massive, heavy shelling in eastern Ukraine, where 9 people have been killed, 26 wounded, thousands of civilians have been displaced, hundreds of thousands of civilians are without basic supplies. I don't know if it is a coincidence that this weekend on Saturday, President Putin and President Trump had a phone call, but you should react. I'm happy that the High Representative is here with us to call for a ceasefire, for humanitarian aid, and to restore the political process. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Grazie, onorevole CORAZZA-BILDT.
Thank you, Ms. CORAZZA-BILDT. Ms. FOTYGA has the floor.
Thank you. Chair, I would like to raise the issue already mentioned by Mrs. CORAZZA-BILDT, but unfortunately, the situation in eastern Ukraine and the humanitarian crisis in Avdiivka, destroying of whole critical infrastructure and perishing of civilians require our debate here in the plenary, and therefore I propose to add this point to the agenda, and please vote on this.
Onorevole LUNDGREN.
Mr. Lundgren.
Thank you, Mr. President. Today a new item will be added to the agenda, managing the migration in the Mediterranean. With regard to this proposal, the EFDD group would highlight that our member, Beatrix von Storch, already tabled a major interpellation on managing the migration in the Mediterranean. This issue is already in the pipeline for a parliamentary follow-up with the High Representative. So, Mr. President, could you please confirm that the major interpellation tabled by the EFDD group shall not be dismissed on the ground that a debate on a similar issue takes place today? Thank you.
Grazie, onorevole Farage.
Thank you, Mr. Farage.
President, thank you. Can I just respond to the somewhat bizarre communist intervention from the German member Joe Leinen, who wants us to ban and bar. Oh, isn't this just the European House of Democracy? So you shout me down before I've even said anything. Well, Mr. President, these people's minds aren't very open. Can I just point out that it would be somewhat bizarre to bar and ban Ted Roosevelt Malloch from any engagement with the European Union, given that he hasn't even been appointed yet.
Onorevole Marias.
Mr. Marias.
Κύριε Πρόεδρε, θα ήθελα να σας ενημερώσω εσάς και το Σώμα για μια ιδιαίτερα επικίνδυνη...
Thank you very much. Well, President, I want to tell you about a development which is very dangerous in terms of members of the European Parliament being able to exercise their responsibilities. On the 24th of July, as a member of the Petitions Committee, I expressed my position supporting and voting for reasons of the protection of public health against the expulsion of a mining company. Now, this business is engaged in drilling activities, but given the circumstances, I can't express my free opinion. I would utterly denounce this business because they didn't allow me to express my opinion freely. And you, as the President of Parliament, I would ask you to look into this case so that my rights to express my opinion freely are guaranteed. I should not be the subject of threats from a mining company.
Mr. Marias, could you kindly send me a detailed letter on this point? We'll ask DG to check on it and see what can be done. We are committed to freedom of expression for all members. Ms. Gomes.
Mr. President, besides supporting my colleague Joe Leinen in his request that the person designated as ambassador to the EU will not be accepted, I want to hear you, Mr. President, as President of this Parliament, on behalf of this Parliament, to clearly condemn as illegal and against international law and our principles as allies the measures that President Trump has announced in the US banning Muslims and from certain countries as racist, xenophobic, discriminatory and inviting terror reactions.
There will be a debate on what's going on in the United States. My position, of course, will be that established by Mr. BAREKOV.
Can I just say, this outpouring of liberal left grief, we've not seen the like of it. Were you outpouring, were you marching on the streets when President Obama proposed this ban on these 11 countries? No, it's a 90 days moratorium. Where are you marching on the streets? You're not.
Scusate, stiamo parlando.
I'm sorry, we're talking about items on the agenda. But here people talking about the probable future appointment of the US ambassador to the European Union. So kindly respect the rules of procedure. Mr. Barekov has the floor.
Господин председател, бих искал да информирам Европейския парламент, че днес в моята родина България отбелязваме.
Well, I'd like to inform the European Parliament that today in my homeland Bulgaria we are marking the victims of communist terrorism. Thousands of Bulgarian families, including my own, are the victims of this terror, and I would like this to be discussed. I don't want to offend my colleagues on the left, but these are historic events and we need to discuss them because millions across Europe lost their lives.
Bene, il progetto.
Very well. The final draft agenda as approved by the Conference of Presidents under Procedure 49 has been distributed. Following consultations with the political groups, I wish to put to the House the following proposals for change to the final draft agenda. Wednesday, the 1st of February 2017, a statement by the Vice President of the Commission, High Representative of the Union for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy on travel restrictions following US President executive orders would be added as the first item, followed by one round of group speakers only. Item 2 will be a statement by the Vice President of the Commission, High Representative of the Union for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy on managing migration along the Central Mediterranean route. Well, that will be added as a third item, actually, after the Commission statement on the state of the Energy Union. And the third change is the oral question on biological low-risk pesticides would be postponed to the February 2-part session. As a consequence, the sitting will be extended until midnight. Are there any objections? The agenda is thus amended. In addition, I've received the following request. On Wednesday, the Europe of Nations and Freedom Group has asked that a statement by the Vice President of the Commission on EEAS secret activities be added as a second item after his statement on travel restrictions following the US President's executive orders. I'll give the floor to Mr. Mayer to move the request of the ENF Group.
Dankeschön, Herr Präsident.
Ich möchte für unsere
Thank you very much. On behalf of the group, I would like to ask for an agenda point to be added after the limitation on travel, and this is the EU Intelligence Analysis Center, which is a rather strange name for a secret service. This service has come about in the dark. There's no legal basis for it, nor has the European Parliament have any opportunity to monitor or control this service. I think it's the only time ever you'd have a secret service which is not under the control of Parliament. So I would like to look at the role of this generally, and particularly in the context of the attempted putsch in Turkey in July. But I know it's a long day, but I'd like to put this in.
Thank you, Mr. Mayer. Would anyone wish to speak against that proposal from Mr. Mayer?
Allora io metto ai
In which case I shall take the vote. I put Mr. Mayer's request to the vote. I would remind you this is that we add to the agenda an item on EEAS secret activities. Those in favour, please show. Those against? Any abstentions? That addition is rejected, so the agenda remains unchanged. On Thursday, the 2nd of February, the group of the European People's Party and the group of the Alliance of Liberals and Democrats for Europe have asked that a Commission statement on democracy and justice in Romania be added as the first item in the morning. As a consequence of that, the votes would start at 11:30 instead of 11 o'clock. I shall give the floor to Mr. Weber to move the request of the EPP and ALDE groups. You have the floor.
Sehr geehrter Herr Präsident, liebe Kolleginnen und Kollegen.
Thank you very much. The confidence of the citizens in the state is the very basis of the way we understand statehood. And when there's corruption, then this basic principle of trust in and confidence in the state is shaken. And therefore, the fight against corruption is a fight for Europe. Unfortunately, we're now seeing a situation where decrees are being used. More than 2,000 current cases, which were really corruption cases that should actually be investigated, have been shelved at ACTA, and somebody who's already been found to be corrupt has now been cleared. So I think it's essential that we discuss these developments in Romania. Ladies and gentlemen, when the state is something that can be bought through corruption, then it's very serious. We've got hundreds of thousands of people in the streets in Romania to protest. We support the President of Romania, who is using his power to counter this movement. We have to do something. Thank you.
Il gruppo liberale chiede.
Would the ALDE group have any different proposal? Mr. Nicolai? Ms. Nicolai, sorry.
Thank you very much, Chair. The ALDE group requests a debate in this Parliament, not behind closed doors, such as it was the situation before when it came to Romania, and we'd like, Mr. President, to have a debate on the state of democracy and the rule of law and justice in Romania. We would like for this debate to answer a few questions, and these questions do not belong to me as a politician, but belong to the community of magistrates in Romania. We would like for this debate to answer the following questions. Is the criminal policy the competence of the government or of the courts? Are the decisions of the Constitutional Court in a rule of law state optional for the judges or the prosecutors, or are they mandatory? Are the conflicts between political powers of the state should be managed by the judicial power? Do we need the parliaments to adopt laws? Do we need the laws that govern the functioning of justice to be implemented together with the secret services through administrative means and not by the law. So these are the questions that we need an answer to, and the magistrates in Romania, Mr. President, ask for this response and ask for this debate in the European Parliament, and we would welcome tomorrow's debate. Thank you.
Mi pare che le due.
It seems to me that although the two proposals have been put forward with different wordings, we can bring them together. So I believe I'm in a position to put it to the House that we have a single proposal whereby we have a Commission statement on democracy and justice in Romania. We've heard that proposal, which is now a joint proposal from the EPP and ALDE, but I shall now give the floor to Ms. Rodrigues to speak against that request. You have the floor, madam.
Mr. Chairman, let me speak. SD position is in favour of having a plenary discussion about democracy and justice in Romania, as this is proposed particularly by ALDE group. We also think that we need to clarify facts by complementing this debate in plenary with a proper discussion in LIBE committee, and we feel that we should also send a fact-finding mission to Romania to check what is really happening. We consider that this is particularly important to clarify these points, not only the purpose of the legislative package adopted yesterday, but also the way the prison system is working in Romania, as well the way the judicial system is being worked. So this is our proposal. Debate in plenary, debate in LIBE committee, and the facts-finding mission to Romania.
Onorevole, chiede di mettere ai voti anche la sua proposta.
Do you wish us to take a vote on your alternative proposal as well? That alternative to the Liberal and EPP proposal?
Agree with the ALDE proposal when it comes to debate in plenary on the theme democracy and justice in Romania. We agree with this proposal, and we add to this proposal a proper discussion in LIBE afterwards, as well as a facts-finding mission to Romania.
Vediamo se. Sentiamo il gruppo popolare, onorevole Weber.
Let's hear what Mr. Weber says from the EPP group.
Präsident, ich bitte nur Klärung. Also
President, I just ask for an explanation. I mean, we're talking about a discussion that will take place in this mini plenary, so tomorrow morning. I mean, if the Socialists vote in favour of that, then that'll be fine. But a further postponement of the debate wouldn't be appropriate, we don't think. So I think that's how we should move.
Capito bene.
If I've grasped this aright, the Socialist group is calling for a further debate in the LIBE committee. Is that right?
I agree with the debate in plenary, but we add two other initiatives, debate in LIBE, as well as facts-finding mission in the country itself. This is our proposal.
Possiamo unificare.
Can we bring the proposal together? We would bring together the proposal set out by Mr. Weber and Ms. Nicolai with that from Ms. Rodrigues, so that we would have a plenary debate followed by a debate in the LIBE committee and a fact-finding mission to Romania. Can we agree on that? If so, I shall put that request to the vote. Those in favour, please show.
Chi è contro?
Those against? Abstentions? That is agreed. There will be a Commission statement on democracy and justice in Romania tomorrow then, as our first item in the morning, which means that the votes will start half an hour later than originally scheduled. The agenda is thereby adopted.
L'ordine del giorno reca la dichiarazione del vicepresidente.
Our first item is a statement by the Vice President of the Commission, High Representative of the Union for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy, on travel restrictions. The President pauses and gives the floor to the member in seat 189.
Mr. President, but I think Madame FOTYGA had an amendment asked to our agenda and our working plan. She has asked, by picking up the proposition of Mrs. CORAZZA BILDT, to put also Ukrainian crisis and escalation in Avdiivka on our working plan in this mini session. So, and I think only according to our working methods, if there is such a request, we should vote.
Onorevole Harms, avevo ascoltato.
Ms. Harms, I listened carefully to what the member said, but the rules of procedure are such that any request for a change to the agenda has to be tabled at least half an hour before the debate by the group. We didn't receive that request. I heard what the honourable member said in the House, but we cannot change things at this point. We have to respect our rules of procedure. So we now have the statement by the Vice President, High Representative of the Union for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy on the travel restrictions following the executive orders of the President of the United States. May I remind members that we will not be using the catch the eye procedure here, nor the blue card procedure. So let me give Federica Mogherini the floor. Thank you, President. Before going any further, may I compliment you on your election to the presidency of this House. I feel certain that we will enjoy the wonderful cooperation we've already had.
One element that